Serial City Chronicles is a podcast focusing on past and present crimes in Battle Creek, Michigan, the heart of the nation's leading cereal production companies. As a resident of the town myself, I will take you beyond the smells of Fruity Pebbles in the air and bring awareness to the unfortunate crimes of this small town I call home. Hey, creatures! Whether you're tuning in from your car, office, or even your bed, I am glad that you are here. I am Kayla Davis, and you're now listening to Serial City Chronicles. Let's dive into today's story. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Episode 7 of Serial City Chronicles. I am bringing you a case that was brought to my attention by my aunt. She attended elementary school with a girl whom had a tragic ending to her life. Thank you to my Aunt Angel for her recommendation, and stay tuned because this is a very special episode. 1978 is the year we are time traveling to today, March 9th, 1978 to be exact. Michigan winter was nearing its end, but the citizens of Battle Creek couldn't escape the cold weather yet. This Thursday in March had a high of 38 degrees, with a frigid low of only 2 degrees. The Great Blizzard of 1978 would have taken place this year. Yes, this is the storm our grandparents, parents, and other loved ones used to tell us about, and still do to this day. I am sure I have plenty of listeners whom experienced this blizzard themselves. Also that year, the unfortunate events of the Jonestown Massacre would occur, where 900 people would die in a mass murder-suicide. On a lighter note, the first Home Depot was also opened in 1978. In Battle Creek, Michigan, March 9th was a normal Thursday of life. People would finish their work days and head home. After dinner, families would gather around and watch Three's Company or Laverne and Shirley. You could find Mom in the kitchen singing along to songs like Hopelessly Devoted to You from the infamous movie Grease. Now, as nice as it is to picture families gathering around to eat dinner together and then tuning into a show, the reality is this wasn't the case for a lot of families, or most importantly, a lot of children. We all know the unfortunate reality that not all children grow up in a loving home, a safe home, or even a home in general. I find crimes against children to be extremely difficult to cover. Even worse is when the crime is committed by a parent against their own child. There is something so evil in people who can hurt their own babies. I'll never be able to grasp it. You have one job as a parent: protect your children. I wish that wasn't optional for parents, but sadly, as we will learn today, it is. Our story today is one that rocked me to my core. I have actually been working on this story for close to 6 weeks now. The reason this story is different than the rest is because I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with another victim in this crime. Before we get into the interview portion, I'm going to outline what happened first. On that 9th day of March in 1978, 6-year-old Sally Chesebro was heading home with her family from school conferences. Sally was joined by her mother Bonnie, stepfather David, and older sister Nancy, whom was 7 years old, almost 8. The family was heading back home to settle in and prepare for another day of work and school the next morning. This, sadly, is one of those families where the kids were not as lucky as others. Sally and Nancy grew up in a very abusive home. Her mother and stepfather both abused them regularly, with the majority of the physical violence coming from their stepdad. On the night in question, Bonnie, Sally's mom, would make a startling call to police. Bonnie would call the police and claim that her daughter, 6-year-old Sally, had drowned in the bathtub and that they needed help. By the time the police arrived, Bonnie and David had dressed the deceased child and had her waiting for the ambulance. Unfortunately, Sally was pronounced dead on arrival at Lila Hospital in Battle Creek. Today, this hospital no longer exists. The cause of death at first was ruled accidental drowning. Once no water was found in her lungs, the cause of death was deemed inconclusive. Shockingly, the case was closed, and no further investigation was done as no foul play was suspected. A dry drowning is what they would call it. Now remember, it's 1978. That's all I can say as to why this was not investigated any further. Now I want you to hear the day of Sally's death from someone else's perspective. a person who had firsthand knowledge and experience of exactly what Sally experienced in her short life, a person who loved Sally deeply, and the person who found Sally in the bathtub that fateful day, the sister of Sally Chesebro, Nancy Cherbeyla-Haken. I sat down with Nancy, and we recounted the day of the crime, what happened after, and what her life is like today. Let's start by hearing Nancy's account of the day her sister Sally died in 1978. Please note that this is my first real interview for the podcast. The audio is not the same as my voice you hear now, and I will get better at this, I promise. Also note, this is an unscripted interview, and Nancy was able to share what facts she wanted and how she wanted to share them. Please respect her truth and the strength it takes to talk about a traumatic event such as this. Here we go.
We went to conferences and we came back and Bonnie and David were the type of parents that was not really involved in doing things with the kids or being up with them. They always slept. They were in the bedroom, sleep, the house was always chaos and everything. So Sally and I was sitting there watching TV, and at the time, Bonnie sold Avon.
Okay.
We weren't allowed, being raised strict Baptist and everything, we weren't allowed to wear makeup per se, but we could wear like clear nail polish, things like that.
Okay.
And so Sally and I wanted to put some clear polish on, and I went and asked Bonnie and said, "Hey, Mom, can you put some clear nail polish on?" You know, she sold it on, she had everything. And she said, "Well, wait till we get up." Okay, so we go back in the living room, and we're playing board games and what have you, and got tired of waiting. You know, kids invitation. Yes. I can't even tell you how much time went past. It could have been 2 minutes.
Yes,
still.
Felt like hours. You were ready to paint your nails.
We were ready. And so I got impatient. Anything, I went and got the nail polish out, and I put it on both of us, and I went and put it back, and you know, kind of figured it's clear as you notice, you know, kind of thing. And but you know, we're young, we don't take account of certain things like the smell in the air.
Smell.
Yeah. And so Bonnie got up to go to the bathroom. Now the house that was set up, there was the living room, and then you had to go, there was the living room and then the dining room. Right off in the dining room was their bedroom. But then you went a little further this way, it was the kitchen, and you turned right into the kitchen is the bathroom.
Okay.
So we're in the living room. Bonnie comes out to go to the bathroom behind us because the couch is this way. And she could smell the nail polish. And she asked who got into it. Oh, you know, we're stupid little kids. You know, it's like, well, I don't know. Not me.
Who did that?
We don't know. You know, like that. So she went and got David. Now, off to the side of the couch, set two, like, lazy boy chairs with an ottoman in front of each one of them. And Sally was standing in front of David's ottoman, and I was standing in front of Bonnie's ottoman. And we kept going back and forth saying that we didn't do and we don't know, you know, being kids and all that. And then for some reason out of the blue, and Sally has never done this, I had done this for her because she was my baby sister, but she had never took a punishment from me.
Okay.
And what happened was she said, "Oh, I did it," you know, just to get this all done and over with.
Yes.
She goes, "I did it," like that. And before I could say anything, David pushed the ottoman against her, made her fall to the floor as she was getting up, Bonnie had my baton. She picked it up from the floor and whacked her across the legs right about here. I don't know if I still have them, might have them, but if you look at the autopsy with her on the table, you could see the bruises where she was whacked and everything. And then they just started beating up on her, and you can see all the bruises all over her body from just beating up. And I'm yelling at them to stop, and they're not listening to me. And I'm telling them to stop, that it wasn't her. And then Bonnie yelled at me to go run the bathtub full of cold water. and I did as I was told, sobbing and everything.
Of course.
And they made her get into the bathtub. And it was a usual, common,
pretty normal punishment. Okay.
And actually, it was a punishment that was advised to use for us from a pastor at that time.
Wow.
That they were pastor at the church. As a matter of fact, the pastor was kind of freaked out because the cold case had called him in to be a witness because of the punishment.
Yeah.
And even though they didn't have anything solid against the pastor, but just in case they could use him, they called him in, and he was freaking out.
I bet he was.
They ended up couldn't use him.
No.
But they did like the idea that they had. I don't know what state he lived in at the time, or he does now, but they liked the fact that he freaked out about it. If they could have, they had hoped that either Bonnie or David would point the finger at him.
Yes.
Is why they wanted him there, because he could have gotten charged with what was maybe accessory, but I'm not sure about
something like
what
that.
the legalities were, everything, but they couldn't do it. So, but it was satisfying enough to know that he was sweating it out.
Of course, absolutely. After giving that kind of advice,
yeah,
to punish a child.
Well, he told my parents that we were evil, and that's how to get the demons out of us.
It was the freezing cold water.
Yeah, and so back to the day of. It was some time had passed by. I remember sitting there, I was watching the I Love Lucy show, and I know the episode. I know right where it was when I got up to go and check on her. Bonnie's lawyer tried to discredit that story, like, well, how would you remember that? Do you know for sure? And the cold case did an awesome job. They did the research, and they found the old TV guide and everything around that time. Yes, I Love Lucy was playing. Nothing came on at that time exactly on time like it does now. Of course. But the fact that it fit the timeline of the time that she died, and all this happened, that I Love Lucy was
and
playing.
And that you did remember.
And I did. I remembered so many details that they tried to debunk.
Because it was traumatizing, so of course you remember the details.
Yeah. And I spent my life remembering just in case that one day,
Yeah.
And so I was watching that, and I got up because Sally and I, we weren't allowed to be in the bathroom together because we would get water all over, and Bonnie had slipped once on a mess that we made in there, so we weren't allowed to be in the bathroom together. And we kind of figured out, we were smart enough to figure out, okay, so we can call each other out so we could use the bathroom.
I read that. Clever.
And so, and that's what we did for each other. And when I went to go do that for her, prior to that, Bonnie and David had gone into the bathroom. I saw them go that way, but I didn't think nothing of it,
Yes.
And then, I don't know how long after that I went in. I would say it could have been no more than 5 minutes, maybe less. And that's when I found her face under, because she wasn't responding for me to come in or anything. So I just walked in, and I found her face under.
Oh, awful. I can't imagine. Did you start yelling for your mom? And
yeah, first I reached in and tried to pull up, and she was so heavy. And back then, it sounded like she was trying to talk to me, but I think a part of me still thinks she was, but also I think part of it was the sounds, the air releasing when I pulled her up.
Yeah.
So it could be a mix of both. It could be one or the other. But back then, I thought sure she was trying to talk to me.
Yes, at a young age, of course.
I wouldn't know that could have been air releasing or anything like that. And so I I yelled out for them and everything, and it took a long time for them to respond, which was really odd when you think about it because they had just gone in there a few minutes beforehand. And so Bonnie came in first. She couldn't pull her out of the bathtub. And then she yelled for David, and David pulled her out, got her through the kitchen into the dining room. When he put it down, hit her head on the back on the scales that was sitting there. But it wasn't a hard hit, but it was, that weight and putting her down.
Noise, yeah.
It wasn't like slam or anything like that. But they were freaking out and were because of what happened. I didn't know at the time what had happened until the pieces came together later. Because I saw them go in, I saw them come back out all wet and everything, but I didn't put the two and two together right away. And they were yelling at each other, whose fault it was, and all that. And I remember all that commotion, and they were trying to dry her off and get her dressed and everything. And Bonnie is pacing back and forth, wondering what to do. And I'm sitting there telling her to call the ambulance,
911, yeah.
And I don't think we even had 911 then.
Really?
I don't think the 911 was, you directly called, yeah.
Okay.
Don't hold me, and I'm pretty sure we didn't.
Yeah.
Because some houses in that area still had, what's that called? I just was talking to my husband about it the other day, where you share a line.
Oh.
So some of the houses still have.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I was telling her to call the ambulance. Instead of calling the ambulance, she called my grandmother, her mother.
Okay.
And was screaming and crying on the phone and everything. And I could hear my grandmother say, call the ambulance too. Just call the ambulance.
Of course.
And so she hung up and she called the ambulance. And I don't think she wanted to call the ambulance because she knew what she had done and was worried about it. And so the ambulance did come, and they were confused about why she was, some of her hair was dried off and partially dressed and everything. And that was the other thing, that they dressed her in green and black plaid pants. And I remember that and everything. And
I thought that was a really odd part of the story when I read it, is that the police didn't think that was odd. So you said they did think it was odd that it was she supposedly drowned, but then she was dressed.
Yeah, and Eric was like the ambulance guy. He was really kind of confused about that and everything. And Bonnie's lawyer was trying to make me question what she was wearing, what they were trying to put on her in court. And so, and I stood my ground and says, no, I know it was these pants.
Yeah.
And so the cold case had pictures, and stuff, and it was upsetting to see my sister laying on the slab, but she was laying there with those pants on I described. And so the lawyer said, hey, is this it? And I just like, those are the pants.
That's right.
And described them to a T, and I never saw that picture before.
Wow. Because you knew you were. I mean, you were right the whole time.
Yep.
They tried to discredit multiple things that you remembered, and I'm sure a lot of it had to do with your age.
Yes.
But
they did bring that up too. Yeah.
But traumatizing things we can remember a lot better than other things at young ages.
She the day that she died was also my best friend's birthday. It was her best friend too. We shared the same one. Her name was Rachel, and I went to school the day after. And so Rachel, she would meet us at the corner of Jericho, and to meet her, and we would walk to school together. And she remembers when I was there. She said I was in like a daze.
I bet.
And she had asked me, well, where's Sally? Did she come to school today? And she says, Nancy, you looked at me then, and she died yesterday, and started walking off to school.
Oh.
And she's like, I didn't know it at that time, but now looking back at it, you were in shock.
Yeah, and she will never forget that conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh, goosebumps from that. That is,
That's really tough at that age. I mean, how do you accept that? And really, you don't understand even at that age. You know, you knew that she wasn't here anymore, but you didn't understand that.
Teachers were surprised to see me in school.
I was gonna say the day after.
And
surprised your parents even sent you.
They did call authorities because I guess they figured that it was a good time for them to come and talk to me without my parents around.
Oh, yeah.
Because what ended up happening was that when the ambulance got there and they put her in the ambulance, Bonnie rode in the ambulance with her, whereas David drove a car, and I rode with him. And this is where it hit me at that age that they did this, was because up until this point, I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I saw, but like I said, I didn't put the pieces
Piece it
together.
together, of course.
Until I got in the car with David, and he looked at me, he says, "You tell them what happened, what Bonnie and I did, we will kill you too."
I can't tell you how much respect I have for Nancy after this interview. The strength it takes to relive this nightmare so that we can remember her sister is truly remarkable. Now, as you may have guessed before you heard the interview, Sally Chesebro's death was no accident. She was murdered on March 9, 1978, at the hands of her stepfather and mother. As Nancy stated, she knew at the young age of 7 years old that her own parents were responsible for her sister's death. David may have been her stepfather, but it was the father in her life. So at 7 years old, Nancy packed away that trauma and tried to move forward without her best friend and sister by her side. Life did not get easier for young Nancy, only harder. Next, we are going to hear Nancy speak about what her life was like after her sister passed. This clip will show you exactly why it would take 18 years before Nancy would go back to the police about that day in 1978. Here we go.
So then they got divorced, and you lived with...
Well, Bonnie lived upstairs on Jericho Road when they got divorced, and he lived downstairs for a while.
Oh, okay.
I'll touch this subject very lightly.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Bonnie got involved with some very bad people with child sex, if you know what I mean.
Okay. So she was bringing people around the house that shouldn't have been.
Right. She pimped me out. And she had paid for it. I got one guy arrested. So.
Good for you. Wish justice could be served to all of them, but we also know how hard that could be in the process of that. And so was now, did David know what was happening? Was he aware of what was going on?
Oh, he was part of it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, she was in the house. He was part of it. And a lot of this is in my book too. He even tricked me when Bonnie and I had moved out. He even tricked me. I had friends that lived in the neighborhood I would still go and see, and I'd walk, and he tricked me one day to come up to the house to come in. He goes, "Well, I got something of Sally's to give you," and he wouldn't allow us to take a lot of Sally's things. Okay. And so it was like, oh yeah, that's better than candy in a white van. It was to give me Sally's stuff,
Of course.
And so he ended up keeping me there overnight. Now, in Bonnie's defense, she thought I was spending the night at my friend's house, but at my friend's, her parents, something came up, I don't know what it was, and I had to go home. So I was walking going home. Oh, back then you don't have cell phones.
No,
you just pop in the door. It's like, hey, I couldn't spend the night.
Yep. Oh, you're home.
So, so in her defense on this one, and I don't come to her defense very often, she thought I was at my friend's house spending the night, but I honestly, even if she knew what was going on, she probably would have looked the other way anyways. So David tricked me and kept me in the house, wouldn't let me leave, spend a night there. And those plastic clothesline rope, it has rope in it, but it's covered with plastic. Yeah. He had some of that around, because we used to have a clothesline in the backyard there. And he had tied me up with that just all over and every way he could, and left a loop at the top of my hands. My hands were like this, and there was a loop. And what he ended up doing with that loop was he had me stand on the stairs, and the old chain lamps, and they have the hook in the ceiling. He had me hanging up there all night while he did what he wanted to do, and then in the morning he let me down, untied me, had his way, and had me go out the door and gave me nothing of Sally's.
Oh, how awful. So both of them were monsters. Nobody was protecting you at all.
No.
Now, how old were you when you finally were done and you cut ties with Bonnie?
I was living in Marshall at in a foster home.
Okay.
And I got noticed that I was going to go back to Bonnie. About a week, you go back to your mom's. She cleaned up her act again and was sending you back. And I remember every foster child has a guardian ad litem, a lawyer for their representative.
Okay.
And the lawyer had at the time, I can't remember his name, but I remember his office, and I remember his kindness, but his office would happen to be in Marshall, and I could walk to his office. It was right there, not too far from the middle school, because I went to the school there for a bit. And so I went there because he was really good at keeping appointments and having appointments. He wasn't just show up at the court and here I am.
Yeah.
He actually would meet with me about once a month. So it was time for that, and I walked to my appointment, and I was crying and upset because I got the message that, Bonnie cleaned up her act, she's going back. And it was like a week from my 12th birthday. And because I remember them saying it would be just after your birthday, you'd be going back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was crying, and he's like, because I didn't want to go back.
Of course.
And my lawyer asked me, he's like, do you want to get kind of not rid of, for lack of a better phrase, but do you want to leave your mom for good? Pretty much is what he was asking me. I'm like, yeah, He's like, you're 12. You could take your mom to court and have her rights taken away at the age of 12. So he went on to say, because you're 12 and if you want to do this, we need to find somebody who's willing to take responsibility for you. And at the time, it ended up being between my grandmother Edith or my Aunt Lisa. And given dynamics at the time of what was going on, my grandmother couldn't. So my aunt did it.
Okay.
My aunt said, yeah, I'll do it. And I was really blessed for her to do that, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have gotten away from her.
No, that was your way out.
Yeah.
This was the hardest part of the interview by far. To hear what this poor girl endured at the hands of the people who were supposed to love her is sickening. Even worse, Nancy lived through the trauma of losing her only sister and was blamed for this. During the interview, Nancy detailed to me that her mother Bonnie and stepfather David took her to the cemetery where her sister was buried and forced her to apologize to Sally. They claimed it was her fault Sally was dead and she needed to tell her that she was sorry. I can't imagine the pain and trauma this inflicted on a young 7-year-old child. We are now going to fast forward to 2002, the year Sally Chesebro would start to get justice. Now to recap, Nancy went to the police in the late 90s to report what she saw the day her sister Sally died. She reported she watched her parents come out of the bathroom wet that day, and not long after, her sister was found dead in the bathtub. Unfortunately, at this time, police did not have enough evidence or the money to investigate the crime further. This was according to Nancy herself. However, her admission would lead to the police reopening the case that year. It wouldn't be until 2002 that a cold case team picked up this case, found the evidence needed to prosecute, and had Bonnie and David arrested. Bonnie Van Dam, her mother, and David Walton, her stepfather, were arrested in 2002 and charged with second-degree murder of their daughter, Sally Chesebro. So the original cause of death for Sally was ruled inconclusive. Remember that this was due to the autopsy revealing no water in Sally's lungs, so they could not rule it a drowning. A dry drowning is what it would be deemed, which was labeled inconclusive at the time. It wouldn't be until 2003 that her cause of death was changed to hypothermia. This was thanks to the cold case team picking up Sally Chesebro's case. Remember in the interview when Nancy stated Sally was in the cold water as a punishment? Well, that is actually what killed her. The water was so cold, and 6-year-old Sally was left submerged in the water for too long. It was also uncovered she had severe bruising to the back of her skull, indicating someone forced her head down on the bottom of the bathtub, under the water, and they did it more than once. This poor, innocent child died a painful death, and the ones responsible were about to go to trial. In January of 2004, Bonnie Van Dam's trial would begin. The charge was second-degree murder of her own child by placing her in ice-cold water as a form of punishment. Bonnie's former sister-in-law, Connie McCord, testified when she lived with the family that the girls were placed in cold baths almost daily, sometimes for hours and sometimes with ice cubes too. She also testified that a month before her death, her sister-in-law told her she didn't want any children. Teachers that knew Nancy and Sally also testified, claiming the girls lacked hygiene and support at home. One of the most memorable statements for me was Sally's teacher claiming that young Sally always looked like she just needed some love. This is heart-wrenching. It was difficult to hear the testimonies of people who saw the girls needed help, yet no one intervened. Nancy would also testify against her mother, as well as multiple medical professionals. Sadly, Bonnie would be found not guilty of second-degree murder. She would walk away after covering up and even participating in the murder of her own child. The judge in her case explained, since the punishment of cold water immersion was used frequently and no injuries had occurred, it wasn't known by Van Dam that death could occur. The judge would have considered a lesser charge of manslaughter, but unfortunately, this charge did carry a statute of limitations. This was only 10 years, and it had long expired. So unfortunately, it came down to not enough evidence pointing directly to Bonnie, and she wouldn't have to pay for the terrible crime she committed. Now we have another trial to discuss as well, the trial of her stepfather, David Walton. This would also begin in January of 2004. The evidence would be primarily the same, except for a few key details. Bonnie would testify against David. Also, 2 police officers would admit David told them he held his stepdaughter under the water that day. During testimony, it would also be said that David was known to hold the girls under the water until they blacked out. The fact he hadn't killed one of these poor girls before this day is honestly a miracle. Thankfully, justice would be served this time, and David Walton would be found guilty of second-degree murder of taking the life of Sally Chesebro, his own stepdaughter. He would be sentenced to life in prison and would finally have to pay for what he did all those years ago. It's baffling to me that one of them is in prison and one of them is free. It sounds like everyone knew they were both guilty, and it came down to a technicality. They were in the bathroom together the day Sally was killed. Whether Bonnie participated or not, she knew the truth, and she never said anything. She didn't protect her daughter, in life or in death. Sally Chesebro was only 6 years old when her life was brutally taken from her. If it weren't for the courage of her sister Nancy, the world may never know the truth, and Sally may have never gotten justice. Now we will hear from Nancy one more time to find out where Bonnie and David are today.
Now, as far as I understand it, David is in prison, and your mom is not.
Well, here's the story about David.
Mm-hmm.
David was sent to prison for second-degree murder for life. Now, the December before COVID, he was let out because he's nurse homebound. He was on his deathbed.
Oh.
But I never was informed of that. And some people on the cold case team wasn't too happy that I wasn't informed. I found out from my cousin who lives up north.
That he was out of prison.
Yeah, because he says, how do you feel about David being released? I go, what do you mean? And I checked it out, and sure enough, he was in December, and the December before COVID. And he ended up passing away not long after he was released. But I had I keep in touch with a lot of the cold case people, and
Good.
they were upset that I wasn't involved.
Yeah.
Because they should have.
If anybody should have been alerted, it would have been you.
Right, and I was on the list. You're supposed to alert the.
Yes.
There was excuses for it, but it didn't fly too well.
No.
But it is what it is, but he's where he belongs.
He absolutely is. And no contact with Bonnie.
Bonnie, with her, what ended up happening afterwards, well, she ended up getting this one particular guy who ended up following her around and kind of torturing her, but not, in the illegal sort of a
Yes.
way, but upsetting her in sort of a way, and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Okay.
This is your hell.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then I did have a meeting with Bonnie once, and I took my best friend at the time. Her name is Bobby, wonderful woman. She went with me, and I wanted answers.
You deserved answers.
I wanted to hear from her. I still got some of the runaround, but I did get more answers.
Good.
But I didn't let her gaslight me either.
Mm-hmm.
I called her out on everything. And she was trying to say how David abused her and things like that is why it happened. And like, that's, first of all, even if that was true, it's no excuse. I don't think it was true. Did he yell at her and stuff? Like that? Yeah, I saw that. But I didn't see abuse. The abuse was inflicted on Sally.
On the
and I.
children, yes.
And I think she tried to internalize that it was happening to her too. So I called her out on that. I called her out on a lot of stuff. The woman that she was living with thought I was really cold because she asked me for contact information, and I said there's no need for that. And she's like, well, your mother's not in great health, we need to be able to contact you in case something happens to her. I says, I don't want to be contacted.
That's not my problem.
And that's exactly what I said. And she's like, but it's your responsibility. I said, she's no more my responsibility than I was her responsibility.
Absolutely. The perfect way to say it. Yep. I owe her what she owed to me. So
Exactly.
here we are.
And
Which is still hard to do. It's hard for a human being to do that. Even though she was terrible, she was still your mom. So it's still hard at the end of the day.
Well, the lady that she was living with told me right out, she said, that's a really cold way to look at it. I'm like, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
She's never had anything to do with my children or nothing.
I was really shocked to hear that David got out of prison and died a free man. He may not have been free from illness, but he died outside of the bars and cement walls. That seems unfair to me, and I know it was extremely tough on Nancy. I am sad to hear that Nancy has no contact with her mother, and I'm also elated at the same time. She owes that woman nothing, but Bonnie owes Nancy everything. So 47 years later, she made it through a very traumatic childhood. She ensured her baby sister's killer was prosecuted, and she is still here talking about her story today. She is an inspiration, and her story deserves to be heard. So let's end on a high note, as I know Sally would be so happy to hear how her sister is doing today. Unfortunately, the audio quality of this part of the interview wasn't clear enough to use. I will share what Nancy shared about her life now in 2025. Nancy is a mother of 3, a set of boy-girl twins and another girl. She is happily married and living close to the family she has created. Her children are grown now, and she is even a grandma. Nancy has lived a life full of love and family, even though the hand life dealt her started off so unfair and cruel. Nancy is successful, driven, and empathetic, all traits she had to learn on her own, a true testament to her as a human being. It was a real honor to sit down with Nancy and learn about her sister Sally Chesebro, a sweet 6-year-old girl who was taken far too soon, a girl who loved to paint her nails and play with her sister, a girl who was just starting school and making friends, a girl who deserved love and who deserved better. Thank you to Nancy for sharing her story and being vulnerable enough to let you all hear it. If you'd like to know even more details about the horrific life these young girls lived, Nancy has written a book. You can find it on Amazon, and it is called The Walls of Jericho. I actually received my copy today, and I have started it. I cannot wait to finish it. Thank you, Nancy, for sending me a personal copy. Let's all remember Sally Chesebro, and never forget that it is never too late to speak up. Nancy is living proof that even through fear and the fight against time, she was finally able to speak her truth. I hope that gives at least one person the strength they need to speak theirs. With that being the longest episode yet, we definitely need a palate cleanser, maybe more than ever. Our local small business of the week is Cereal City Candles, LLC, veteran-owned and operated by Kelly. These candles are hand-stirred, hand-poured, and 100% made of soy. Cereal City Candles has amazing reviews and truly is customer-driven. Check out her Facebook page or email her at cerealcitycandleco@gmail.com. Fall will be here before we know it. Who doesn't love a candle burning as the leaves are falling? Now I want to thank you all again for tuning in to episode 7 of Cereal City Chronicles. Please be sure to subscribe and give me a review wherever you get your podcasts. Comments and 5-star reviews will continue to help push the podcast to more listeners. If you want in on all the latest with Cereal City Chronicles, follow along on TikTok and Facebook. You can find current events, photos related to episodes, and even merch here. I want to apologize again for the differing audio levels from the interview portion to my voice. I am working on my official studio so that future interviews have better sound quality. Thank you for your support and love. It really keeps me going. Well, that's all I have for today. Tune in right back here in 2 weeks to hear more true crime in the infamous Cereal City. Be safe and be kind.